Hello everyone, it's Misty. Welcome back to another card video. So this week at the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge, it is party time and we're featuring products from Your Next Stamp, like this adorable little monster stamp set. It's called Silly Birthday Monsters. And I'm just going to color them up with my Copic markers. Just doing really simple coloring. I'm only using two colors. I'm using the BG49 and the BG45. And I really like these two colors together. I am still always amazed at how well the Copic markers blend together. If you don't have any Copic markers, I definitely recommend them. It's an investment, but it's definitely worth the investment. I started out with the Spectrum Noir markers, just because I had no coloring experience and they were cheaper than the Copics, and I just couldn't get them to blend as well as the Copic markers do. So I'm sure it was user error because I've seen people do amazing things with Spectrum Noir markers as well, but I just got a couple one day to see what all the hype was about, and that was it. That's all it took. I'm Team Copic now, all the way. So if you don't have any, be careful, but it's definitely worth the investment. I'll list all the colors that I used over on my blog, just because I cut out most of the Copic coloring on here. So I used the Femme Frame by Mama Elephants to get my scalloped card front here, and I don't believe that's available at Simon Says Stamp anymore. But I think the frame in the basic set, the Creative Cuts basic set, also by Mama Elephant, I believe it's the same die. So I have that link in the description below. This circle die is from the Nested Circles by Simon Says Stamp, and it's a 2-inch circle. So I'm tracing it on my background, just so I know where to ink blend my colors, kind of give me an idea of where I want the darkest. I wanted it to be a little bit darker at the bottom, and then fade up to a little bit lighter. So this is the Distress Oxide Wilted Violet. And I thought I was blending on Bristol paper, but it just wasn't blending as smooth as it normally does on this paper. So I might have put, some Nina cardstock where I normally keep my Bristol. Because usually it blends really smooth. But it's okay because my little monster here is going to cover up any of my imperfections. So it was the Wilted Violet, and now I'm going to use a Spiced Marmalade. I was trying to keep the border white because I didn't know what I wanted to do with that, but I had already ruined it on the top one, so I just went with it. And then I can still see my pencil marks, which will come in handy when I put the sequins in. So I just decided to kind of do a half and half. I tried to do it at a diagonal, do the one half of it with the orange and then the other half with the Spiced Marmalade, and then the other half with the Wilted Violet. But as you can see over on the right, there's a little blob where it almost looks brown. So I was keeping an eye on that because it wasn't dry yet, so I wanted to see how it was going to look when it was dry and when I was done, to see if you would even notice it. And you don't really notice it because there's so little of it showing, so I just left it. All right, so I have my 2 holes cut out of my card front here, and then I was going to use the same circle to cut out my craft foam. So I went ahead and traced it so I knew where to put them. And then I decided not to, because I would have had to have ran it through twice because they're both the 2-inch circle, and it would have just flattened my craft foam. So I just cut them out by hand. And this way I can go a little bit bigger than the circle I traced, because you don't want any of that to see through your shaker window. And I ended up putting a B on it because the two circles were pretty much cut in the same place if I flipped it around the other way. So I didn't want to make a mistake. So I'm using sentiments from the Simple Sentiments #1. I think that's what it's called. This is Simple Sentiments #1, yes. And this is by Simon Says Stamp and CZ Designs. I'm going to end up changing the sentiment in the end, but for now, I'm going to heat emboss it with white embossing powder on some black cardstock. So I wanted to make them all little banners, so I just stamped them at the bottom of my page, and then I'll cut each one out with a little banner. So I got my heat tool nice and hot, and then heat set the embossing powder. And then I'm just going to take a microfiber cloth and wipe over the top of it to remove any of that anti-static powder that was still there. So I did some partial die cutting on the sentiments here. I only wanted one side to have the banner end on the top one, and then the middle one I have it on both ends, and then the bottom one I have it on just the right side, or left side. So it goes right, both, left. Yeah, so I had Let's Have Drinks. I didn't realize how kid-friendly this card was going to be, I guess. It's definitely for like a kid's birthday, but most of the time I really have no idea what I'm going to do when I sit down to make a card, so I really didn't know where this was going to go yet. But when it's all said and done, the Let's Have Drinks doesn't really fit for this card. So my card front was feeling way too plain, so the stamp set has this really cool like little confetti stamp, so I just decided to stamp my entire card front with it. And then that way I could color it the same colors of my background and my monsters. But look how easy this is to stamp and how quickly, well, I know I have it sped up, but it was pretty quick to stamp out the whole card front here. I love stamp sets that have an image like this because you can make a pattern for your background or your card front, and it's open so you can color it any color you want. And I love making my own backgrounds or card fronts like this. I'm using a Sharpie pen here because I can wipe it off after I cut it. That's what I really like about this pen. So I'm just cutting it to size. And then I'll wipe off that little black smudge at the bottom. You don't have to use a full sheet of acetate if you don't want to. I just find it easier, but you can cut 2 pieces just to cover the size of your hole or your opening, and then obviously a little bit bigger so that you can glue it in place. But I just find it easier to just do a whole sheet if I have 2 windows like this. So I'm just going to glue my background down to some black cardstock just to give me a really thin black border. I figured that was a good way to tie in the pattern on the front and the black sentiments. So I'm going to take some score tape and I'm going to make sure I cover all the area around each opening, just so none of my sequins or beads can escape. But I'm also putting it all around the border too, so that way my craft foam doesn't lift anywhere. There's quite a few different ways to do shaker cards like this, and I've tried several of them, but I think this is my favorite way to do it with the craft foam. I've done it with the foam tape where you have to use your anti-static powder just so the tape, all the sequins don't stick to the tape on the inside of the window. I've made little pockets with my fuse tool. I like doing it that way too, but this is just, you find which way works best for you, and then that's just the way you always do it. So this is the way I found works best for me. I need to expand my horizons though. I feel like I'm kind of getting in a rut with my cards, and there's so many different like interactive cards that I've never tried. I want to try doing a box card, I think it's called. I've never done one of those. So hopefully someday when I have time, I'm going to try that. That's the key word, those, when I have time. Never seem to have enough of it. All right, almost had a baby heart attack here because I I almost messed up on the craft foam. It got a little too close to the edge, and luckily I was able to lift up the score tape, which usually once it's on there for good. So I was happy I was able to lift it up a little bit, and the craft foam stretches, so I was able to pull it over a little bit so it wasn't right on the edge of the card front. But I was sweating it for a second. So this is where those circles that I traced came in handy again, because I could see where I wanted my sequins to be so that they would stay in the center and not travel off and get stuck under the score tape or the craft foam. And I really love how this front panel turned out. I love the colors in it. Definitely looks like a celebratory card. And I'm just going to glue my little monsters in place here. I'm going to use liquid glue for them so that I could shimmy them down a little bit so they don't look like they're floating in the windows. And if you remember, on the right hand side, about a third of the way down, is where the two colors, the Spiced Marmalade and the Wilted Violet, didn't blend very well, and it was looking kind of brown. But see, you can see here, and now that it dried and I have the card front on, you really can't see it. So I'm glad I didn't stress too much about that. Nobody would even know if I wouldn't have pointed it out. And I kept the sequins just silver and clear, just because I had so much else going on here. I thought it was best to keep them simple. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use my liquid glue for these sentiments as well. There's certain times when I like the score tape, like when I'm using craft foam or acetate, and then there's certain times when I like the liquid glue, just so I have a little bit of wiggle room. So in the pictures, you'll see I went, I replaced the Let's Have Drinks. I didn't actually replace it, I just put another sentiment right over the top of it, so made it a little more kid-friendly. And then I'm just going to add my card front, or my card to a card base here. This is the Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock. And that's it. That's my card for this week's Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. If you do, click on that little bell icon so that you won't miss any of my new videos. I usually post one new video a week. I'll have all the supplies that I use listed and linked in the description below, and you can always head over to my blog for more information as well. I'll also have links to the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge if you're interested in joining us. Hopefully you will. I'd love to see your creations. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!